Who knows, a friendly little visit like this could be the start of something. You're walking along the street, or you're at a party,
Or else you're alone, and then you suddenly dig. You're looking in someone's eyes, you suddenly realize
that this could be the start of something big.
Hey, Kim here. Well, here we are, the end of the week. It's been a long 7 days, and we're finally to Sunday. We've seen some truly gigantic shows come through the lineup in 1965. In fact, some of the biggest shows of the 1950s were still on the air and coming to an end, while those series that are considered the epitome of the middle and late part of the decade were starting to hit the airwaves at this point. However, there's still a bit left to go, even with just 1 day remaining. So, without further ado, here's what was on TV in Sunday night, 1965. As the night opens up, the general pattern of the season, as we've seen it, continues. A battle between ABC and CBS, with NBC off in their little corner with the Bell Telephone Hour. The show was a staple of radio going back to the 1940s, spotlighting classic and Broadway music. This was still the era of the Great American Songbook, after all. Meanwhile, CBS started the night with the main family offerings with the long-running half-hour series Lassie. Coming smack dab in the middle of its supersized run, 1965 saw Lassie just 1 season removed from a substantial narrative shift. The show had remained largely unchanged since 1958, featuring Lassie and Timmy, played by John Provost, along with his parents, played by June Lockhart and Hugh Riley. We talked about June Lockhart earlier this week, thanks to her supporting role in the family adventure drama Lost in Space, which was also airing in 1965. The family had relocated the previous season, and Lassie was taken in by a Forest Service ranger, played by Robert Bray. The show would continue to run in various forms until 1973. Meanwhile, the ABC ran with the fictional adventure series Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea. The show starred Richard Basehart and David Hedison, and was based on the 1961 film of the same name, coming from legendary creator Irwin Allen. The series followed the crew of a nuclear submarine in the near future and brought together an interesting mixture of science fiction and espionage plot lines popular to this era of television. 1965 saw the series entering its second of 4 seasons. It would run on the network until 1968. While ABC finished their hour-long programming, that left NBC and CBS going head-to-head, and these are both shows you've likely heard of. First of all, CBS started with the 3rd and final season of My Favorite Martian. The show starred Bill Bixby and Ray Walston, and it was a half-hour sci-fi comedy following Bixby as a newspaperman who takes in a space alien, played by Walston. The show had been running on the network since 1963. Meanwhile, NBC went with the anthology series Walt Disney's Wonderful World of Color. The series was a super long-running performer on the network. It is Disney, after all, running on various networks and with various names until modern day. Many might remember the series under the name The Wonderful World of Disney. While Walt Disney's Wonderful World of Color finished on NBC, CBS, and ABC went head-to-head with a pair of titans. I don't need to give the first one an introduction. The Ed Sullivan Show is The Ed Sullivan Show. The variety series was a cultural staple of a generation, running for more than 20 years between 1948 until 1971. We all know it was Ed Sullivan who had the pleasure of introducing the United States to the Beatles in 1964. However, this is only one of the entertainment milestones which defined the series. Very few could keep up with Ed Sullivan, and it was he who defined Hollywood expectations of the variety show during this period. Meanwhile, ABC threw in a new show against the dominance of Ed Sullivan with The FBI. The show starred Ephraim Zimbalist Jr. in his follow-up to the long-running series 77 Sunset Strip, which had ended the previous year. The FBI was an action procedural, but the show wasn't much of a gamble. While many shows faltered in the face of Ed Sullivan, this one stayed the course. The show ran for 9 seasons before it ended in 1974. With Ed Sullivan and the FBI finishing up on their respective networks, NBC dropped another Western. We've discussed previously that Westerns were working their way out by 1965, unless you were NBC, that is. They still had quite the selection. In the autumn of 1965, Branded was entering its second season after it took over for the canceled Bill Dana show in early 1965. The show starred Chuck Connors, fresh off his long-running success in The Rifleman. This time out, he starred as a former cavalry captain who had been branded a coward, unjustly, of course. I mean, he is Chuck Connors after all. As the clock chimed the next half hour, each network had new offerings. ABC transitioned into the Sunday night movie to close out their night. Meanwhile, CBS and NBC saw two more of their titans going head to head. Mason is a show that needs no introductions, especially for classic film fans. The show had been a staple on the network since its 1957 debut and starred Raymond Burr as the titular attorney, Barbara Hale, and William Hopper. The series was a mainstay in popular culture, having originated as a series of mystery novels by Earl Stanley Gardner before becoming a film series in the 1930s starring Warren William. By this point, the television series was entering its 9th and final season. Meanwhile, this behemoth of a show was airing across the dial. If you don't know Bonanza, you know that theme song. The show starred Lorne Greene as Ben Cartwright, the patriarch of the Cartwright clan on their ranch, the Ponderosa, in post-Civil War Nevada. The show starred Dan Blocker and Michael Landon as the other members of the legendary family. This season would be a transitional one for the show. Co-star Parnell Roberts, who played eldest son Adam, walked away from the show at the end of the previous season. Never fear for Bonanza, though. The series was only midway through its run to become one of the longest-running westerns on television. The series premiered in 1959 and would go on to run until 1973. As the ABC Sunday night movie continued, CBS and NBC went head-to-head with some drastically diverse programming. And no, NBC wasn't showing a Western this time around. As they brought their night to a close, NBC aired the first and only season of The Wackiest Ship in the Army. The show was based on the 1960 feature of the same name, which starred Jack Lemmon and Ricky Nelson. This time around, the show starred Mark Slade, Jack Warden, and Gary Collins as sailors on a ship in the Pacific Theater during World War II. The show was an unconventional hour-long comedy, and we know what happens to unconventional shows. It was canceled after the first season. Meanwhile, CBS shifted the tone of the night to nonfiction programming with Candid Camera. Candid Camera is one of those go-to nonfiction offerings which are trotted out by the networks every few years and features people getting spotted in humorous situations caught by hidden cameras. The forum has episodes dating as far back as 1948 until as recently as 2014. During this incarnation, the show was hosted by I've Got a Secret staple and former Miss America Bess Meyerson. With The Wackiest Ship in the Army and the Sunday night movie finishing on their respective networks, CBS had the night all to themselves with What's My Line? The legendary game show had started on the network in 1950 and ran in largely the same form ever since. The panelists had changed a little, but this was mostly the same show that had pioneered game shows on television the decade before. John Charles Daly presented the show with panelists Bennett Cerf, Arlene Francis, and Dorothy Kilgallen until her November 1965 passing, still very much active. The show would continue on the network until 1967. Well, that's the week. That's the wrap. So, With this little bit of analysis, there isn't much of a change going on here. Lassie plus My Favorite Martian plus Ed Sullivan plus Perry Mason plus Candid Camera plus What's My Line. That's the night for CBS. More than likely, you've heard of all these shows. I mean, granted, there are high performers on every channel over the course of the night, most notably Bonanza, Walt Disney's Wonderful World of Color, and the FBI. However, none of the networks could equal that full block of shows that was presented on CBS. Stay tuned. I'm wrapping up the year of 1965 the next time we get together with a look at the full year of television at the Emmy Awards. Who was nominated? Who won? What does that mean in the context of what we've talked about in these last 7 videos? Stay tuned for more here at Ticklish Business as we honor and deconstruct the world of classic entertainment. My name is Kim. You can find me on Twitter at ticklish_biz as well as at kpierce624. Facebook person, give us a like or a follow over at Ticklish Business Podcast. We have lots of classic entertainment content posting at journeysinclassicfilm.com. As always, if you like what you're seeing, please like and subscribe. Thanks, guys.